welcome to Sociology 101. My name is Matthew Dolby, and today we will be discussing the Breakfast Club. No, not the group of old people that meet at the butt crack of dawn to get the early bird special at Cracker Barrel, but we will be discussing the classic 1985 movie, The Breakfast Club, directed by John Hughes. In this movie, there are 5 kids from very different social backgrounds who all have to serve detention in Saturday school. But who are these kids? First, we'll look at the Brainiac, Brian Johnson, who is played by Anthony Michael Hall. Then there's the Prom Queen, Claire Stendish, played by Molly Ringwald. Next, we have the Jock, Andrew Clark, played by Emilio Estevez. Then there's the Criminal, John Bender, played by Judd Nelson. And finally, there's the Basket Case, Alicia Reynolds, played by Ali Sheedy. But let's not forget the principal, Richard Vernon, who is played by Paul Gleason. When these 5 kids all show up for detention, they view each other simply as their stereotypes. But what is a stereotype? Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines a stereotype as a fixed idea that many people have about a thing or a group that may often be untrue or only partially true, or an often unfair or untrue belief that many people have about all people or things with a particular characteristic. So what are some of the stereotypes within this group? Let's start with Brian. Brian is the nerd. He's a member of the academic elite. He's in the math club, the physics club, the Latin club. He is a virgin. He's a poor dresser, and his parents must be so proud of him because he gets straight A's. Most likely, he is going to get a free ride to college simply because of his academics. Next, we have Claire. Claire is a member of the Popular Kids Club. She is conceited, materialistic, and everyone just loves her. Most likely, she is going to get a free ride to college simply because her parents are rich. And there's Andrew, the jock. He's a musclehead. He's quick to use physical force. He's a bully. All he knows about is sports. And most likely, he's going to get a free ride to college due to his athletics. Then there's John, the criminal. He's a social outcast who gets in trouble. He's a rebel. He talks back and refuses to conform. All he knows about is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He's a loser, and he'll probably never go to college. Allison is a basket case. She is quiet. She's a social outcast. She's probably suicidal. She's considered a freak because she wears dark clothes. She's probably abused. She needs a shrink. And in the movie, they do depict her as a kleptomaniac, a compulsive liar, and an amazing artist. Then there's Principal Richard. He is the typical authority figure who wears a suit. He assigns people homework and punishes students that don't obey his rules. Who helps to create these characters are known as agents of socialization. These are families, schools, and even peers. Let's look at these agents, and we'll start with the family. According to the textbook, The Real World, family is the single most significant group with the longest lasting effects on one's personal values, egos, and self-esteem. Let's take a moment to look at each of these characters' families. In Brian's home, his parents are overbearing. They pressure him to get straight A's, and he feels that if he gets anything less than straight A's, his parents will probably think he's a loser, and they will scold him accordingly. Claire's family, her parents are divorced, and she feels that her parents use her to get at each other. Then, they try to make it up to her by buying her expensive gifts. Andrew's father is the typical father jock. He pushes him to be the best. Anything less than number one is seen as failure, and his family doesn't want any losers in the house. So win, win, win. John comes from a very different kind of family. His family is physically and verbally abusive, and the constant yelling and fighting and calling him a loser, beating him, and burning him with cigars is rather detrimental to his self-esteem and his self-image. Allison's family simply ignores her, almost as if she doesn't exist. This type of social isolation is detrimental to her self-esteem. The next agent of socialization is the schools. According to the textbook, schools help to facilitate education as well as values, norms, and socially acceptable behaviors through their curriculum and through the hidden curriculum. Peers are considered to have the quickest impact on our values, egos, and self-esteem because they are the people that most closely relate to us. Why? Because peers are generally around the same age and have the same interests. That's why we call them friends. That brings us to peer pressure in the movie. Other than the characters' friends pressuring them to act or be a certain way throughout the normal day of school, there are also scenes of peer pressure throughout the movie. The first act of peer pressure in the movie is quite simply the fact that they were all talking, even though they were told to sit quietly. Another is the scene where John wants to go to his locker and everyone follows. Allison was the last to go. Then, they all smoke weed, except for Allison. She is never seen actually smoking. In the end, they all open up to each other because they're all telling their own stories. So how does this relate to sociology? Well, first let's look at the theory of the looking-glass self. This theory is the notion that the self develops through our perceptions of others, evaluations, and appraisals of us. A better explanation comes from the popular social science magazine, which states, "The view of ourselves comes from the contemplations of personal qualities and impressions of how others perceive us. Actually, how we see ourselves does not come from who we really are, but rather from how we believe others see us." So basically, the characters in this movie act out in accordance with what they think their friends think they are. This thought process leads us to Goffman's theory of dramaturgy, which is an approach to view social life and analyze it in terms of similarities to theatrical performances. 3 stages of this dramaturgy are the personal fronts, the backstage performance, and the front stage performance. Each of the characters in the movie display their personal fronts, which is to say they dress the part. Brian dresses in fairly plain clothes, while Claire has expensive clothes, flashy jewelry, and her makeup is always put together. Andrew wears his athletic gear and his leather jacket, while John has long hair, earrings. He wears layered shirts with the flannel shirt unbuttoned, which was popular at the time, a blue jean jacket, again popular at the time, and an overcoat. And of course his ensemble would not be complete without the fingerless gloves. Allison wears dark clothes, dark makeup, and usually covers her face with her hair. The The next process of dramaturgy is the backstage. In this stage, people create and refine their characters in their mind. Then, there's the front stage in which they act out the characters that they have built for themselves. These clothing choices and characters are all still based on what they think other people think they should be. The principal, who does play a fairly insignificant role throughout the movie, does present a question that is fundamental to the entire movie. He assigns them an essay in which they are to try to explain, who do you think you are? Not who are you, simply who do you think you are? This gears the characters to open up and actually start thinking about who they really are. Here are my final thoughts on the movie. I think it's a great movie and deserving of the title Classic. There are quite a few twists and turns, and it would seem that the characters had changed by the end of the movie. However, I feel that once they get back home and continue living their normal daily lives with friends and family, they will eventually revert back to who they were. While this experience in detention may have allowed them to realize that other people aren't so different, I don't believe that one day in detention is going to truly give them a life-altering experience.